They locked the door from the outside. I heard the click of the deadbolt, then my stepdaughter Jessica's voice through the cheap wood. "Someone will bring you dinner at 6. Don't make trouble, Patricia, or we'll have to sedate you." I stood in that tiny room, barely 10 feet by 10 feet, staring at the peeling wallpaper and wondering how my life had come to this. 72 years old, locked in a nursing home room like a prisoner, while my stepdaughter and her husband took over my life. Before we continue, please subscribe to my channel. Your support means a lot to me. Now let's return to my story. What Jessica didn't know, what nobody knew, was that this nursing home, Sunset Valley Care Center, wasn't just any facility. I should know. I own it. I own this building and 47 others just like it across 6 states. My name is Patricia Whitmore, and I'm about to teach my stepdaughter the most expensive lesson of her life. Let me back up 3 months to explain how I ended up locked in my own property. I met Jessica's father, Robert, when I was 65 and he was 70. We were both widowed, both lonely, both looking for companionship in our golden years. He was kind, gentle, everything my first husband hadn't been. We married after dating for a year. It was simple, a small ceremony at the courthouse with just a few friends. Robert's daughter Jessica didn't attend. She was 42, divorced, struggling financially, and she made it very clear she thought I was a gold digger after her father's money. If only she knew the truth. Robert died 2 years later from a sudden heart attack. The grief nearly destroyed me. Despite Jessica's coldness, I had loved him deeply and genuinely. At the funeral, Jessica approached me with her husband Derek, a slick-looking man in an expensive suit he couldn't really afford. "Patricia," Jessica said, her voice dripping with false sympathy, "I know this is hard, but we need to talk about Dad's estate. The house, his accounts, everything." "Your father and I discussed all of this," I replied quietly. "Everything is in order." "I'm sure it is," Derek interjected with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "But Jessica is his daughter, his only child. Surely you understand she has certain rights." I did understand. I understood exactly what they wanted. Robert had owned a modest 3-bedroom house worth about $300,000 and had about $150,000 in savings. To most people, that was a decent inheritance. To Jessica and Derek, who were drowning in debt from Derek's failed business ventures, it was a lifeline. What they didn't know was that Robert's assets were entirely separate from mine. What they didn't know was that I had built my own fortune long before I met him. And what they definitely didn't know was that I had learned, after my first marriage ended in an expensive divorce, to keep my financial life completely private. "We'll let the lawyers handle everything properly," I told them at the funeral. Robert left clear instructions. Jessica's face tightened. "I'm his daughter. I shouldn't need lawyers to get what's rightfully mine." But she did need lawyers. Because Robert, knowing his daughter's character, had left specific instructions. The house would go to Jessica, but she couldn't sell it for 5 years. The savings would be split, $100,000 to Jessica, $50,000 to various charities Robert had supported. When Jessica found out, she was furious. "$50,000 to charity?" she screamed at me in the lawyer's office. "My father left money to strangers instead of his own daughter?" "Your father loved you," I said calmly. "But he also knew you needed to learn financial responsibility. The house is yours. The restrictions are to protect you." "Protect me? You poisoned him against me. You manipulated an old man into cutting his own daughter out of her inheritance." The lawyer intervened, but the damage was done. Jessica declared war on me that day. The harassment started small. Phone calls at midnight. Emails accusing me of elder abuse. Social media posts claiming I had stolen from her dying father. I ignored it all. I dealt with worse in my life. But then Jessica got creative. She started showing up at my house, Robert's former house, which I'd bought from the estate specifically so Jessica wouldn't have to deal with selling it. She'd bring concerned friends, who would ask intrusive questions about my health, my memory, my ability to care for myself. "Patricia, do you remember where you put your keys?" Jessica would ask in front of her witnesses. "You spent 20 minutes looking for them yesterday." I hadn't. But her witnesses would nod sympathetically, documenting my confusion. She escalated to calling Adult Protective Services, claiming I was living in squalor, that I couldn't feed myself, that I was a danger to myself and others. APS visited 3 times. 3 times they found me perfectly healthy, living in a clean home, fully capable of independent living. The caseworker actually apologized for the 3rd visit. "Ma'am, I'm sorry, but we have to investigate every complaint. For what it's worth, you're one of the most capable seniors I've worked with." But Jessica didn't stop. She filed for emergency guardianship, claiming I had dementia and needed immediate intervention. The court hearing was a joke. Jessica brought her witnesses. Friends who'd visited my home once and claimed they saw signs of cognitive decline. She brought printouts of my social media, claiming my posts were erratic and confused. I brought my medical records showing perfect cognitive function. I brought testimony from my actual doctor. I brought financial records showing I managed multiple complex business accounts without any assistance. The judge dismissed Jessica's petition in less than an hour. "Ms. Whitmore," the judge said, looking at Jessica with clear disdain, "if you continue to file frivolous claims against your stepmother, I will hold you in contempt. Mrs. Patricia Whitmore is clearly competent, and your behavior borders on harassment." I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. 2 weeks later, I woke up in a hospital. My head was pounding, my vision was blurry, and I couldn't remember how I got there. Jessica was sitting in a chair by my bed, her face arranged in an expression of concern that looked practiced. "Patricia, thank God you're awake. You fell at home. Hit your head pretty badly. The doctors are worried about brain injury." "I didn't fall," I said, my voice weak. "I was in my kitchen. I was making tea and then nothing. The memory just stopped." "You don't remember because of the head trauma," Jessica said smoothly. "The doctors say you might have had a stroke or a seizure. They want to keep you for observation." Something felt wrong. Very wrong. But my head hurt too much to think clearly. I was in the hospital for 3 days. During that time, Jessica was my constant companion. Helpful, concerned, telling the doctors about my recent confusion, my memory lapses, my episodes. None of it was true. But with a head injury, suddenly her lies sounded plausible. "We need to talk about your living situation," Derek said on the 3rd day, appearing at my bedside with a folder of papers. "You can't go back to living alone. It's not safe." "I've fine," he insisted. "Once this headache clears." "Patricia, you're 72 years old, and you just had a serious fall. The doctors agree you need supervised care." "The doctors said no such thing." I started, but Derek opened his folder and showed me a document. It was signed by a Dr. Raymond Moss, someone I'd never met, recommending 24-hour supervised care. "Who is this doctor?" I asked. "I want to speak to my own physician." "Dr. Moss is the hospital's geriatric specialist," Jessica said. "He's reviewed your case. Patricia, please. We're trying to help you." I should have fought harder. I should have demanded my own doctor, my own lawyer, my own everything. But my head hurt so much, and I was so tired, and a small part of me wondered if maybe they were right. Maybe I was getting old. Maybe I did fall. Maybe I did need help. That moment of doubt cost me everything. I signed papers I didn't fully read. I agreed to temporary assisted living, until I recovered. I let them transfer me from the hospital to Sunset Valley Care Center in Jessica's car. It wasn't until they locked the door from the outside that I realized what had happened. I'd been kidnapped. Legally, efficiently, completely kidnapped. For the first hour, I pounded on that door. I screamed for help. I demanded to be released. Nobody came. Finally, a nurse opened the door. She was young, tired-looking, carrying a small paper cup with pills. "Mrs. Whitmore, you need to take your medication." "I don't take any medication. I need to speak to whoever's in charge. I need to leave. This is illegal." "Ma'am, you're here for your own safety. Your family signed all the paperwork. Now please, take your medication or I'll have to note your refusal in your chart." I refused. She noted it and left, locking the door again. I sat on the thin mattress and forced myself to think clearly. Panic wouldn't help. Anger wouldn't help. I needed to be smart. I looked around the room carefully for the first time. Standard nursing home room. Single bed, small bathroom, tiny closet, one window that didn't open. The window looked out onto the parking lot. I could see Jessica's car still there. Then I noticed something interesting. In the corner of the ceiling, a small camera dome. A security camera. Of course there was. This was Sunset Valley Care Center. I'd installed state-of-the-art security systems in all my facilities 5 years ago. Security systems that fed directly to a central monitoring company. A company I owned. A company whose CEO had my personal cell phone number. My cell phone. Where was my cell phone? I checked the small closet. My clothes from the hospital. But no purse, no phone, no wallet. Jessica had taken everything. But she'd made one critical mistake. She'd put me in one of my own facilities. I walked to the door and examined it carefully. Standard nursing home door with electronic lock. The lock connected to the central computer system. A system I knew intimately because I'd approved the specifications myself. I just needed access to a computer or a phone. Any phone. I waited until dinner time. A different nurse, older, kinder-looking, brought a tray of food. "Excuse me," I said politely. "I need to contact my lawyer. I believe there's been a mistake with my admission here." The nurse smiled sympathetically. "Ma'am, many residents feel that way at first. You'll adjust. The first few days are always hard." "I'm not confused. I'm being held against my will. Please, I just need to make one phone call." "Your family has restricted your phone access," she explained gently. "It's in your care plan. They're worried you'll be taken advantage of by scammers. So many seniors fall victim to phone fraud." My care plan. Jessica had thought of everything. "Can I speak to the director of this facility?" I asked. "Dr. Morrison is off today. I can schedule you an appointment for later this week." Dr. Cheryl Morrison. I'd hired her myself 6 years ago. Brilliant administrator, compassionate caregiver, and someone who definitely knew who actually owned this building. "Yes, please schedule that appointment." The nurse left, and I ate the terrible food and I planned. 3 days. I just needed to wait 3 days until Dr. Morrison was back. I could be patient. I'd built a real estate empire from nothing. I could certainly wait 3 days. But on the second day, something happened that changed everything. They brought in a new resident. Through my locked door, I heard the commotion in the hallway. An elderly man shouting, nurses trying to calm him, someone crying. Then I heard Jessica's voice. "Just put him in room 108. The family wants him sedated. He's violent. Room 108. Right next to mine." Through the thin wall, I heard everything. The man wasn't violent. He was terrified. He was begging them not to lock him up. He said his son had taken his house, his money, his car. He said he wasn't sick, he was being robbed. And I heard the nurses sedate him. Heard his protests fade into drowsy murmurs, then silence. This wasn't just about me. Jessica and Derek weren't just targeting me. They'd found a business model. Later that day, the kind nurse came back. I asked her about the new resident. "Oh, Mr. Patterson?" "Yes, his family just admitted him. Very sad case, advanced dementia." He didn't sound like he had dementia. He sounded scared. She lowered her voice. "Between you and me, we've been getting a lot of these cases lately. Families who seem very eager to institutionalize their elderly relatives. But it's not my place to question the paperwork." "How many cases?" 6 in the last 2 months. All through the same lawyer, a Mr. Derek Whitmore. Derek. He wasn't just stealing from me. He'd turned elder abuse into a business. That night, I made my decision. I couldn't wait for Dr. Morrison. I needed to act now, before Jessica and Derek expanded their operation further. The room had a computer terminal for residents who needed internet access. It was locked, password protected, only to be used under supervision. But I designed these systems. I knew the default administrator passwords that most facilities never bothered to change. At 2 a.m., when the hallway was quiet, I tried it. The computer came on. I entered the admin credentials I'd set up years ago. And I was in. It took me 20 minutes to access the central security system, find the CEO's emergency contact list, and send an email marked urgent. "Marcus, this is Patricia Whitmore. I'm being held against my will at Sunset Valley. Come immediately. Bring police. Bring lawyers. This is not a joke. PW. Then I accessed the facility's files and started documenting everything. Every resident admitted through Derek's law firm. Every questionable diagnosis. Every family member who seemed too eager to lock away their elderly relatives. What I found made me physically sick. Derek had admitted 12 elderly people in the last 6 months. All from wealthy families, all supposedly incapacitated, all now completely controlled by their younger relatives. It was a systematic operation to steal from the elderly using the legal system as cover. I downloaded everything to a secure server and sent it to my attorney, my accountant, and the state attorney general. Then I waited. Marcus Reeves, CEO of my security company, arrived at 7 a.m. with 6 police officers, 2 lawyers, and a very surprised Dr. Morrison who'd been called back from her day off. The look on Dr. Morrison's face, when she saw me locked in room 212, was priceless. Mrs. Whitmore? What are you? Why are you? Oh my God. Hello, Cheryl. I think we need to have a conversation about patient admissions. The police unlocked my door. I walked out of that room with more dignity than when I'd been forced into it. Jessica and Derek arrived within the hour, having been called by the facility's front desk about a situation with their patient. They walked into what can only be described as their worst nightmare. The conference room was full. Police detectives, lawyers, the state medical board, the attorney general's office, and me sitting at the head of the table in the building I owned. Mrs. Whitmore, one of the detectives, said formally, "Can you explain to us how you came to be a resident at this facility?" I explained everything. The harassment. The mysterious fall. The fraudulent doctor's recommendation. The forged admission papers. That's ridiculous, Derek sputtered. Patricia is experiencing dementia. We have documentation. From Dr. Raymond Moss? I interrupted. The doctor I've never met? The doctor whose medical license was suspended 2 years ago, but somehow still signs admission papers. Derek's face went white. And these papers, I continued, sliding a folder across the table, show the 12 elderly people you've helped admit to various facilities in the last 6 months, including Mr. Patterson next door, whose house you helped his son sell 2 weeks after admission, for a 40% commission. The detective leaned forward. Mr. Whitmore, we need to talk about elder exploitation charges. I'm a lawyer, Derek said, but his voice shook. I know my rights. I'm not saying anything without my own attorney. That's your right, the detective agreed. You're going to need a very good lawyer. Jessica just stood there, tears streaming down her face. I didn't know. Derek told me this was all legal. He said we were helping people. You locked me in a room, I said quietly. You took my phone, my freedom, my dignity. You watched me pound on that door and scream for help, and you told the nurses to sedate me if I became difficult. Don't tell me you didn't know. The police arrested Derek on the spot. Jessica wasn't arrested that day, but the detective made it clear she was under investigation. As they led Derek away in handcuffs, he looked at me with pure hatred. You won't get away with this. I'll fight this. I'll prove you're incompetent. With what money? I asked. Because I'm freezing all the assets you stole from those 12 families. Every penny is going back to its rightful owners or their estates. And then I'm suing you personally for what you tried to do to me. Dr. Morrison stood beside me, still looking shocked. Mrs. Whitmore, I swear I didn't know. If I had known you were in this building. I know, Cheryl. But we need to review every admission that came through Derek's firm. Today. Over the next week, the story exploded. The media loved it. Secret real estate mogul trapped in her own nursing home by greedy stepdaughter. The investigation revealed the full scope of Derek and Jessica's operation. They'd been targeting wealthy elderly people whose families were greedy. Derek would offer his legal services, suggest nursing home care, use his fraudulent medical contact to provide false diagnoses, and then help the families systematically drain the elderly person's accounts. His cut was 40% of everything they took. 12 families. Over $7 million stolen. 3 of the victims had died in care facilities, never knowing their children had robbed them. 5 were still alive and able to recover their assets. for had lost everything but could at least now live in dignity. Derek was charged with elder abuse, fraud, conspiracy, practicing medicine without a license, and about 30 other crimes. His trial is set for next year, and he's facing up to 40 years in prison. Jessica pleaded guilty to lesser charges in exchange for testifying against Derek. She's serving 5 years, and will never be allowed to work with vulnerable populations again. The house Robert left her was seized as proceeds of crime. His savings, what little she hadn't already spent, were recovered and donated to elder advocacy organizations in his name. As for me, I'm 72 years old, still running my company, and I've added a new mission: protecting elderly people from exploitation. I've funded a legal defense network specifically for seniors facing bogus conservatorship. I've lobbied for stronger protections and mandatory oversight of nursing home admissions. And I've trained my staff to recognize the warning signs of family manipulation. Last week, I visited the 12 victims whose lives Derek destroyed. I offered each of them free residence in one of my facilities. Truly voluntary, no locked doors, full freedom, if they needed it. 10 of them declined. They'd had enough of institutions, and I couldn't blame them. But 2 accepted, and they're now living in a beautiful assisted living community in Florida, with full access to their money, their families, and their dignity. I also did something I never thought I'd do. I made my wealth public. All of it. Every property, every investment, every account. Because I realized that hiding who I was hadn't protected me. It had made me vulnerable. Jessica thought she was targeting a modest widow with a small inheritance. If she'd known the truth, she might never have tried. Or maybe she would have tried harder. Either way, I'm done hiding. I'm Patricia Whitmore. I'm 72 years old. I'm worth $320 million, and I built it all myself. And if anyone tries to lock me in a room again, they'll learn exactly how expensive that mistake can be. If you were in my place, what would you have done? Please share your thoughts in the comments. The end.